The blazing Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the asphalt of Mill Avenue in downtown Tempe when Detective James Cole first heard about the news that had shaken the entire city. It was Monday morning, October 15th, and he had just finished his usual coffee at the Desert Moon Cafe when his phone rang. "Cole here," he answered, watching Arizona State University students hurry to class along the sidewalk. "James, this is Susan from the recorder's office. You won't believe what I just saw." His longtime acquaintance's voice trembled with excitement. Cole had known Susan Wright for 20 years. She was one of those people who knew about every event in town before the local news. If she was calling him this early, something truly unusual had happened. "What happened?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. "Olivia Henderson just filed for marriage. Guess who she's marrying?" Cole frowned. Olivia Henderson. He remembered that name. A young woman who had recently been widowed under tragic circumstances. Her husband, Tom, had been killed in a construction accident just a week ago. "I don't know. Surprise me," he said, though he had a feeling the answer wouldn't make him happy. "Frank Henderson, her father-in-law, James. She's marrying her late husband's father." Cole felt the coffee turn bitter in his mouth. He knew the Hendersons superficially. Frank owned a small construction company called Henderson Construction, which specialized in commercial projects in the Tempe area. Tom was his only son and worked in the family business. A tragic accident at the construction site had occurred just 7 days earlier. "Are you sure?" Cole asked, already knowing the answer. "They're here right now. They're signing the papers. The wedding is set for tomorrow." Cole thanked Susan and ended the call. 23 years as a detective had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now every instinct was screaming that something was wrong. That same day, in a small office at Desert Financial on University Drive, Olivia Henderson sat at her desk, trying to focus on her work. At 28, she was a beautiful woman with auburn hair and expressive brown eyes, but today her face was pale and her hands trembled slightly as she typed on the keyboard. "Olivia, are you okay?" her colleague Jessica asked, approaching the desk with a cup of tea. Olivia looked up. Jessica had been working at the bank for 5 years and was the only person Olivia trusted among her colleagues. "I'm fine," Olivia replied, but her voice sounded unconvincing. "Listen, I know it's only been a week since Tom. If you need more time, I can talk to Mr. Davis." Olivia shook her head. "No, work helps me take my mind off things." Jessica sat down on the edge of the desk. "I heard some strange rumors this morning. People are saying," she lowered her voice, "that you're going to marry Frank." Olivia froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She knew the news would leak out sooner or later, but she had hoped she would have more time to prepare for people's reactions. "It's true," she said quietly. Jessica's eyes widened. "Olivia, what are you doing? Tom died just a week ago." "I know how it looks," Olivia began, but Jessica cut her off. "How does it look? It looks crazy. Frank is your husband's father." Olivia stood up and walked over to the window overlooking the university campus. Students walked along the paths, living their carefree lives. She envied their simplicity. "You don't understand," she said without turning around. "Frank and I supported each other after Tom died. It happened naturally." "Naturally?" Jessica couldn't hide her shock. "Olivia, it's been 7 days. Frank offered me security, stability. After everything that's happened, I need that." Jessica walked over to her and put her hand on her shoulder. "Listen, I understand that you're grieving, but this isn't the answer. People will talk, they already are." Olivia finally turned around. There was a strange determination in her eyes that alarmed Jessica. "Let them talk," she said. "We're getting married tomorrow, and that's all that matters." Meanwhile, in a small house on the outskirts of Tempe, Margaret Henderson stood in her kitchen, clutching the phone in her hands. She had just finished talking to her sister, who had told her the news about the upcoming wedding. At 50, Margaret was a woman of strong character. Her divorce from Frank 5 years ago had been painful, but she had coped and built a new life for herself. She worked as an administrator at Tempe Community Hospital and was proud of her independence. But now she felt as if the floor had been pulled out from under her. Her only son, Tom, was dead, and now his widow was going to marry his father. It wasn't just indecent, it was perverse. Margaret sat down at the kitchen table and tried to collect her thoughts. She had known Olivia for 4 years, ever since she married Tom. The girl had always seemed nice, but a little calculating. Margaret had never been able to understand what Olivia really saw in her son. Tom was a good boy, but not very bright. He was content working on construction sites and never had any great ambitions. Olivia, on the other hand, was educated, worked at a bank, and clearly wanted more out of life. And now, less than a week after Tom's death, she was marrying Frank, a man who owned a successful business and had money. Margaret picked up the phone and dialed Frank's number. He answered after the 3rd ring. "What?" His voice sounded irritated. "Frank, it's Margaret. I need to talk to you. If this is about the wedding, I have nothing to say to you. Our son has been dead less than a week, and you're going to marry his widow. Don't you think that's wrong?" Frank was silent. "Olivia and I are supporting each other. It's what Tom would have wanted." "Tom would have wanted you to sleep with his wife?" Margaret's voice rose. "Don't be vulgar, Margaret. We're not children." "No, but we're parents. Or we were. And what you're doing is a betrayal of our son's memory." "Tom is dead," Frank said harshly. "Nothing will bring him back. But life goes on. For you, maybe, but not for me." Frank sighed. "Look, Margaret, I understand that you're upset. But this is our decision. We're getting married tomorrow, and there's nothing you can do about it." "We'll see," Margaret said, and hung up. Dr. Emily Hartwell sat in her office at the hospital, reviewing medical records. As a pathologist, she had seen many deaths, but the case of Tom Henderson still bothered her. Officially, Tom had died from injuries sustained when scaffolding collapsed at a construction site. But something about the nature of the injuries seemed strange to her. She conducted a more thorough investigation than usual, but her conclusions remained the same. Nevertheless, the news of Olivia and Frank's upcoming wedding made her think about the case again. Emily knew the Henderson family better than most people in town. Several years ago, she had had an affair with Frank, which ended when he reconciled with Margaret. It was painful, but she had moved on. She also knew that Frank's construction company was not in the best financial shape. The last few years had been difficult for the construction business, and she had heard rumors that he had taken out large loans. Emily opened Tom Henderson's file and looked through the photos of the crime scene again. Something was bothering her, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Detective James Cole entered the office. "Dr. Hartwell, I have a few questions about the Tom Henderson case." Emily looked up. "What specifically?" "The circumstances of his death. I heard about his widow's upcoming wedding." "And that makes me wonder if we missed something in the initial investigation." Emily put the documents aside. "Detective Cole, I conducted a thorough investigation. Tom Henderson died from injuries sustained in an accident at a construction site." "Are you sure?" Emily hesitated. "As sure as you can be in a case like this." Cole noticed her hesitation. "But something's bothering you?" "Not really. It's just that some of the injuries were unusual." "How so?" "Some of the injuries looked as if they had been inflicted before the fall, but that could have happened when he fell from the scaffolding." Cole made a note. "Who found the body?" "Frank Henderson. He said he arrived at the construction site early in the morning and found his son." "And where was Olivia?" "At home. She has an alibi. She was on the phone with a friend at the time of the accident." Cole nodded. "Thanks, doctor. If you remember anything else, please contact me." After he left, Emily reopened Tom Henderson's file. Maybe the detective was right. Maybe they really had missed something. The next day, October 16th, was a typical fall day in Tempe. The sun was shining brightly, but the heat had subsided and the temperature was comfortable. About 20 people gathered in the small hall of City Hall to witness the wedding of Olivia and Frank Henderson. Most of the guests were Olivia's colleagues from the bank and Frank's business associates. Close friends of the family and relatives were noticeably absent. Margaret Henderson did not attend. Olivia looked beautiful in a simple blue dress, but her face was pale and her eyes were red from lack of sleep. Frank, a strong man in a nice suit, looked more confident, but even he seemed tense. The ceremony was short and formal. The magistrate recited the standard words. The newlyweds exchanged rings and kissed. The guests applauded awkwardly. Detective Cole watched from the back row. He hadn't been invited, but it was a public event, and he had a right to be there. When the ceremony was over, he approached the newlyweds. "Congratulations," he said. "I wish you happiness." Olivia smiled stiffly. "Thank you, Detective." Frank shook his hand. "I didn't know you were coming." "I just wanted to make sure everything went smoothly," Cole replied. "Sometimes events like this can be emotional." "Everything was wonderful," Olivia said. Cole nodded. "I hope you'll both be happy. If you need any help, you know where to find me." After he left, Frank and Olivia drove silently to Frank's house, where a small reception was to be held. Neither of them looked happy. 3 days after the wedding, news of Olivia and Frank's marriage spread through Tempe like wildfire. In cafes on Mill Avenue, in offices on University Drive, in shopping malls, everywhere, people were whispering about this scandalous story. Detective James Cole sat in his office at the Tempe Police Department, reviewing the file on Tom Henderson's death. Officially, the investigation had been closed as an accident, but something didn't sit right with him. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, his partner of 10 years, entered. "James, we have a problem," Rodriguez said, closing the door behind him. "What kind of problem?" "I just got a call from Captain Wilson. He heard you're digging into the Henderson case." Cole leaned back in his chair. "And?" "And he wants you to stop. The case is closed. The family wants to move on." "What family?" "Frank and his new wife." "James, listen to me. I understand that this marriage looks strange, but that doesn't make it a crime." Cole stood up and walked over to the window. "Mike, I've been a detective for 23 years. My intuition has never failed me. Your intuition isn't evidence in court." "Not yet, but if you find something while working on a closed case without permission, you could lose your badge." Cole turned to his partner. "Then it'll be an unofficial investigation." Meanwhile, in the house on Scottsdale Road where Olivia and Frank now lived, the atmosphere was tense. The house was beautiful, a 2-story Southwest-style building with a view of the mountains, but inside there was a cold sense of alienation. Olivia sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and looking through bank documents. Frank entered the kitchen, already dressed for work. "Good morning," he said formally. "Good morning," she replied without looking up. Frank poured himself some coffee. "I'm meeting with the bank manager today about a loan for the new project." "Okay. Olivia, we need to talk." She finally looked up. "About what?" "About how we're going to behave. People are watching us. Our every move is being discussed." "And what do you suggest?" "We need to look happy, like a couple in love." Olivia smiled bitterly. "A couple in love? Frank, we got married for money, not love. But no one needs to know that. People aren't stupid. They see the truth." Frank walked over to the table and sat down across from her. "Listen, we made a deal. I get access to Tom's insurance, you get financial security. But for this to work, we have to be careful." "I understand," Olivia said, "but pretending to be a happy widow who found comfort in the arms of her father-in-law is difficult." "You can do it. You're a smart woman." Olivia looked at him intently. "Sometimes I wonder if we're too smart for our own good." At Desert Financial, Olivia tried to focus on her work, but her co-workers looked at her with poorly concealed curiosity. Every conversation stopped when she walked by. Jessica approached her desk with a sympathetic expression. "How are things at home?" she asked quietly. "Fine," Olivia replied, without looking up from her computer. "Olivia, I'm your friend. You can be honest with me." Olivia stopped and looked at Jessica. "You want honesty? Fine. It was a business marriage. Frank needed the money from Tom's insurance and I needed security. We're helping each other out." Jessica's eyes widened. "My God, Olivia, what have you done? What I had to do to survive? What if people find out? What truth? That we didn't marry for love. Half the marriages in America are arranged. But not with your late husband's father." Olivia sighed. "Jessica, I understand that it seems strange, but I had no choice. After Tom died, I was left with virtually no means of support. My salary at the bank barely covers the rent. But surely there was insurance." "The insurance was in Frank's name as the beneficiary. Tom never changed the documents after we got married." Jessica paused. thinking about what she had heard. And Frank offered to share if you married him? Something like that. Olivia, that sounds like blackmail. It sounds like survival. At Tempe Community Hospital, Margaret Henderson tried to focus on her administrative work, but her thoughts kept returning to what had happened. Her colleagues avoided mentioning the wedding, but she could feel their sympathetic glances. During her lunch break, she decided to visit Dr. Emily Hartwell. They weren't close friends, but Margaret knew about Emily's past relationship with Frank. "Emily, can we talk?" Margaret asked, peeking into the pathologist's office. "Of course, come in." Margaret sat down in the visitor's chair. "I wanted to ask you about Tom's death." Emily tensed. "Margaret, I understand this is difficult, but do you really believe it was an accident?" "Officially, yes, but..." Emily hesitated. But some details bother me. The nature of the injuries was unusual." Margaret leaned forward. "In what way?" "I can't discuss medical details, but let's just say that not all of the injuries were consistent with a fall from scaffolding." "Do you think Tom was murdered?" "I think a more thorough investigation is needed." Margaret stood up. "Then we have to do something. My son deserves the truth." "But officially the case is closed." "Then we'll do it unofficially." That same evening, Detective Cole decided to pay an informal visit to the construction site where Tom Henderson had died. The site was cordoned off but unguarded. Construction had been halted after the accident. Cole examined the scaffolding from which Tom had allegedly fallen. Something about the layout of the equipment seemed strange to him. The scaffolding was set up correctly, but some of the fastenings looked as if they had been deliberately loosened. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind him. "Detective Cole? What are you doing here?" Cole turned around. Frank Henderson was standing at the entrance to the construction site. "Mr. Henderson, I'm just looking around the scene. But the case is closed. Officially, yes. But I wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything." Frank stepped closer. "And what have you found?" "Nothing concrete yet, but I have some questions." "What questions?" "For example, why was Tom working alone so early in the morning? The workers usually arrive at 7. Frank paused. "Tom often came in early. He was responsible." "And you found him at 6 in the morning?" "Around that time, yes." "What brought you to the construction site so early?" "I wanted to check the equipment before the workday started." Cole nodded. "I see. And where was Olivia at that time?" "At home, asleep. She works at a bank. She doesn't have to get up that early." "Did you check?" Frank frowned. "What do you mean?" "Did you call her? Check that she was home?" "Why would I do that?" "Just curious." Frank crossed his arms. "Detective, I don't understand what you're getting at. My wife, my ex-daughter-in-law, was home. She has an alibi." "What kind of alibi?" "She was on the phone with a friend at the time of the accident." "What friend?" "Jessica from the bank." Cole made a mental note. "Thanks for the information, Mr. Henderson. I hope you understand that I'm just doing my job. Your job is to investigate crimes. There was no crime here." "You may be right," Cole said, "but until I'm sure, I'll keep asking questions." Late that evening, Olivia sat in Frank's living room, reviewing financial documents. The insurance company had begun the process of paying out Tom's life insurance, but it would take time. Frank entered the room, looking concerned. "We have a problem," he said. "What kind of problem?" Detective Cole was at the construction site today. He was asking questions. Olivia looked up. "What kind of questions?" "About where you were this morning when Tom died. About your alibi." "I was at home. Jessica can confirm that. We spoke on the phone." "Are you sure she'll confirm that?" "Of course. We really did talk." Frank sat down next to her. "Olivia, if the police start digging deeper, they won't find anything. We were careful." "Were we?" Olivia looked at him intently. "Frank, are you starting to get nervous?" "I'm starting to think we underestimated people's reactions. It's too late to have second thoughts. We're already married. Maybe we should think about leaving Tempe." "Where?" "I don't know. Another state. Start a new life." Olivia shook her head. "Running away will look suspicious. We have to stay and act normal." "Normal?" Frank smiled bitterly. "Nothing about this situation is normal." "Then we have to make it look normal. Outside, Tempest was falling asleep, but inside the Henderson home, there was no peace. Two people bound by marriage and a secret were trying to figure out how to move forward, unaware that their secret could cost them their lives. The week after the wedding brought new complications. Detective Cole decided to check Olivia's alibi, starting with her colleague Jessica. He met her at a cafe near the bank during her lunch break. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," Cole said, ordering coffee. Jessica looked nervous. "I don't understand why you want to talk to me. Tom's case is closed." "Officially, yes, but I have a few questions about that morning." "What questions?" "Did you speak to Olivia on the phone on the morning of October 8th, the day her husband died?" Jessica hesitated. "Yes, I did." "What time?" "Early in the morning, around 6. "What did you talk about?" "Work, some bank documents." Cole noticed her uncertainty. "Jessica, this is important. Are you sure you remember this conversation?" "Of course I do. It was the morning Tom died." "Who called, you or Olivia?" Jessica paused too long. "I don't remember exactly." "That's strange. People usually remember who initiated a conversation." "Detective Cole, I don't understand what you're getting at. I just want to make sure all the facts are correct." Jessica stood up. "I have to get back to work." "One more question. How long did the conversation last?" "I don't remember. A few minutes." "A few minutes at 6 in the morning about bank documents?" Jessica blushed. Olivia was upset. She had a bad feeling. A bad feeling? She said she had a bad feeling about Tom? After Jessica left, Cole made a note in his notebook. Olivia's alibi was looking increasingly dubious. Meanwhile, Margaret Henderson met with Dr. Hartwell in her office. Emily agreed to show her the medical records informally. "Look at these photos," Emily said, laying the pictures out on the table. Margaret forced herself to look at the images of her son's body. "What am I supposed to see?" "This head injury. It doesn't match a fall from scaffolding." "How not?" "The angle of the blow is wrong. If Tom had fallen from scaffolding, the injury would be on the other side." Margaret studied the photograph. "You think he was hit?" "Possibly. And these scratches on his hands, they look like he was fighting with someone." "Why didn't you mention that earlier?" Emily sighed. "Because each of these injuries could have been explained by the fall. But together, they paint a different picture." "What about the toxicology report?" "I didn't do a full analysis. There was no reason to." "Can you do it now?" "Too much time has passed. The samples have been disposed of." Margaret clenched her fists. "So we'll never know the truth?" "Not necessarily. There are other ways." "Like what?" "We need to find witnesses. People who saw something strange that morning." At the bank, Olivia noticed that her colleagues were acting even more strangely. The whispering stopped when she walked by, and some people openly avoided her. The bank manager, Mr. Davis, called her into his office. "Olivia, please sit down," he said formally. "Is something wrong?" "I've received several complaints from customers." "Complaints? About what?" "About you. They feel uncomfortable working with you after recent events." Olivia felt the blood rush to her face. "Mr. Davis, my personal life should not affect my work." "Under normal circumstances, yes, but your situation is rather unusual." "Unusual?" "Olivia, you married your late husband's father a week after his death. People are talking." "Let them talk. It doesn't affect the quality of my work." Davis paused. "I'm going to transfer you to another position, away from clients." "That's unfair. It's necessary for the good of the bank." Olivia stood up. "Fine, but I want it in writing." "Why?" "Because it's discrimination, and my lawyer needs to know about it." That evening, Frank returned home in a gloomy mood. His meeting with the banker had not gone as he had planned. "How was your day?" Olivia asked. "Disgusting. The bank refused the loan." "Why?" "Officially, because of the instability of the construction market. Unofficially, because of our reputation." Olivia sat down next to him. "What are we going to do?" "I don't know. Without a loan, I can't finish my current projects." "What about insurance?" "The insurance company is stalling. They say they need additional documents." "What documents?" "They want a copy of the police report and a medical report." Olivia tensed. Is that standard procedure? Not usually, but our situation has attracted attention. Do you think they suspect something? Insurance companies are always suspicious when large sums of money are involved. Olivia stood up and began pacing the room. Frank, what if we tell them the truth? What truth? About what happened that night. Frank looked up sharply. Are you out of your mind? Maybe it's better than living in constant fear. Olivia, we can't change what we did. Tom is dead. But it was an accident. Was it? Olivia stopped. What do you mean? You know what I mean? No, I don't. Explain. Frank stood up and walked over to the window. Tom found out about us, about our relationship. And he threatened to tell everyone. Tell them what? That we were seeing each other? That we planned to kill him. Olivia turned pale. We didn't plan to kill him. We were just talking about what would happen if he died. To Tom, it was the same thing. But we didn't kill him, Frank. He fell off the scaffolding. After we talked to him, after he found out about the insurance. That's still murder. Frank turned to her. Then why do you feel guilty? Because we wanted him dead. But wanting and doing are two different things. Tell that to Detective Cole. The next day, Detective Cole met with one of the workers who had been working on Frank's construction site. Juan Morales agreed to talk at a small Mexican restaurant on South Mill Avenue. Senor Cole, I don't want any trouble, Juan said. There won't be any trouble. I just want to know the truth about what happened. Tom was a good guy. He didn't deserve to die. Did you see anything unusual that morning? Juan paused. I got to work early, around 6:30. And what did you see? Mr. Frank's car. It was already there. Is that unusual? He usually comes later, but that morning he was there very early. What else? I saw him talking to Tom. They were arguing. About what? I don't know, but Tom was upset. He was waving his arms around. And then Mr. Frank left. He said he'd be back soon. And when did he come back? Half an hour later, maybe longer. Where was Tom when Frank left? On the scaffolding. He was working on the second floor. And when did you see Tom next? Juan lowered his eyes. When Mr. Frank screamed, Tom was lying on the ground. Juan, this is very important. Did you see Tom fall? No, I was in another part of the building. But you heard something? Maybe a noise, but it's always noisy on a construction site. What about the scaffolding? Did you check it before the accident? Yes, it was fine. Tom knew what he was doing. Then how could he have fallen? Juan shrugged. Sometimes accidents happen. But you don't believe it was an accident? Juan looked at him intently. Senor Cole, in Mexico we say, the dead cannot tell the truth. What does that mean? It means that only the living can tell what happened, and not all the living tell the truth. That evening, Margaret sat in her house looking through Tom's photographs. She came across a picture taken a week before his death. Tom looked troubled. She remembered their last conversation. Tom had called her and said he was having problems with his father. He didn't want to go into details, but he mentioned that Frank was acting strangely. Margaret picked up the phone and called Doctor. Hartwell, Emily, it's Margaret. I remembered something important. What? Tom called me a week before he died. He was upset about his father. Did he say why? No, but he mentioned that Frank was seeing Olivia a lot. Seeing her? Alone. They were discussing business. What business? Tom didn't know, but it bothered him. Margaret, this could be important. I think Tom found out about their relationship. And what did he do? Maybe he confronted them. And they? They might have wanted to silence him. In the silence of the evening in Tempe, two women realized they were closing in on a dangerous truth. A truth that could cost one man his life and destroy the lives of others. 2 weeks had passed since the wedding, and the situation had reached a critical point. Detective Cole had obtained a warrant to examine phone records, despite opposition from his superiors. The evidence suggested that Olivia's alibi had been fabricated. On the morning of October 30th, Cole summoned Olivia to the station for questioning. She arrived without a lawyer, which surprised the detective. Mrs. Henderson, thank you for coming, Cole said, pointing to a chair in the interrogation room. I want to help, Olivia replied, but her voice was trembling. Okay, tell me about the morning of October 8th. I already told you. I was at home talking to Jessica on the phone. Cole opened a folder. We checked the phone records. There were no calls between you and Jessica that morning. Olivia turned pale. That's impossible. What's more, Jessica admitted that you asked her to lie about the conversation. I didn't. Olivia, where were you at 6 a.m. on October 8th? She was silent for a few minutes, then began to cry. I was at the construction site. What were you doing there? I was meeting Tom. Why? He found out about Frank and me. He threatened to tell everyone. And what happened? We had a fight. Tom was furious. He said he would disinherit my father and tell everyone the truth. And then? Then there was an accident. Cole leaned forward. What kind of accident? Tom climbed up some scaffolding. He was angry and wasn't looking where he was going. The scaffolding gave way. But the workers said the scaffolding was fine. I don't know. Maybe Tom damaged them himself when he was climbing up. Olivia, are you telling me the truth? She raised her head. What truth? The truth about what happened between you, Frank, and Tom. We didn't kill him, she exclaimed. It was an accident. Then why did you lie about your alibi? Because we knew how it would look. A mistress and a father killing their son for money. But isn't that what happened? Olivia stood up. I want a lawyer. Of course. But Olivia, the truth will come out anyway. Meanwhile, Margaret received an anonymous phone call. A woman's voice told her to meet her at Kiwanis Park near the lake. When Margaret arrived, she saw an unfamiliar woman in her 30s. Did you call me? Margaret asked. Yes, my name is Cindy. I used to work as a cleaner in Mr. Henderson's office. Used to? I was fired last week. They said they didn't need me anymore. And what did you want to tell me? Cindy looked around to make sure no one was nearby. I saw them together, Mr. Frank and Mrs. Olivia. It was before Tom died. What did you see? They were kissing in the office, and they were discussing insurance. Insurance? Yes. I heard them talking about how much money they would get if something happened to Tom. Margaret felt her heart racing. Are you sure? Absolutely. Mr. Frank said the policy was for $500,000. What did Olivia say? She said Tom would never find out. Are you willing to testify? Cindy hesitated. I'm afraid. Mr. Frank is influential in this town. But if you don't tell the truth, the killers will go unpunished. All right, I'll talk to the police. That evening, the tension in the Henderson home reached a boiling point. Frank paced the living room while Olivia sat on the sofa with her head in her hands. They know, she said. Cole knows we're lying. What did you tell him? That I was at the construction site, that Tom found out about us. Frank stopped. Are you out of your mind? What was I supposed to do? They have the phone records. You should have kept quiet until the lawyer got here. It's too late. The truth is out. Frank sat down next to her. Not the whole truth. What do you mean? You didn't tell him what really happened on the scaffolding. Olivia looked at him. Frank, we agreed never to talk about it. Maybe it's time. Number. If we tell the truth, we'll be convicted of murder. And if we don't, we'll be convicted anyway. Tom fell by accident. After you pushed him. Olivia stood up. It was self-defense. He was going to hit me. Try explaining that to a jury. He was drunk, Frank. He wasn't in control of himself. But he's dead, and we're to blame. The conversation was interrupted by the doorbell. Frank looked out the window and saw Margaret. Your ex-wife is here, he told Olivia. What does she want? Answers, probably. Frank opened the door. Margaret stood in the doorway with a determined look on her face. I need to talk to both of you, she said. Margaret, now is not the time. No, Frank. Now is the time. She walked into the living room where Olivia was sitting. I know the truth, Margaret said. What truth? Olivia asked. The truth about how you planned to kill my son. We didn't plan to, Frank began. Shut up, Margaret interrupted him. I spoke to the cleaning lady. She heard your conversations. Olivia and Frank exchanged glances. Cindy, Frank said quietly, Yes, Cindy, she told me everything. About the insurance, about your plans, about how happy you were to get the money. Margaret, you don't understand. I understand more than you think. My son knew about your relationship. He confronted you, and you killed him. It was an accident, Olivia exclaimed. An accident? Margaret laughed bitterly. You planned his death for months. We didn't plan to kill him, Frank shouted. We were just talking about what would happen if he died, Margaret finished. If your own son died? Tom was a failure, Olivia blurted out suddenly. He would never have amounted to anything. Margaret looked at her with disgust. And you? What have you amounted to? Except becoming a murderer? I'm not a murderer. No? Then what happened in the woods? Olivia fell silent, realizing she had gone too far. Tom found out about us, Frank said slowly. He came to the construction site early in the morning. He was drunk and angry. And he threatened us. He said he would tell everyone the truth. So you killed him to keep him quiet? No, Olivia exclaimed. He started the fight. What happened? Margaret insisted. Tom tried to hit me. I stepped back. He lost his balance and fell. From the scaffolding? Yes, it was an accident. Margaret shook her head. You're lying. Tom couldn't have just fallen. The scaffolding was secure. The fastenings came loose, Frank said. On their own? Frank didn't answer. Or did you loosen them beforehand? Margaret continued. No. Then how do you explain the medical report? Tom's injuries are not consistent with a simple fall. Olivia and Frank exchanged glances again. You know about the medical report? Olivia asked. Dr. Hartwell showed me everything. The head injuries, the scratch marks from the struggle, the angle of impact, everything points to murder. That's not true. It is true. And tomorrow I'm going to Detective Cole with this information. Margaret turned toward the door, but Olivia grabbed her arm. Margaret, wait. Let me go. We can explain everything. I don't want to hear it. Margaret tried to break free, but Olivia held her tight. Please, give us a chance. What chance? The same chance you gave Tom. You don't understand. We didn't mean to kill him. But you did. It was an accident. Stop lying. Margaret jerked her arm away, and Olivia let go. But instead of heading for the door, Margaret went to the fireplace, where heavy metal poker hooks were hanging. What are you doing? Olivia asked. Margaret picked up one of the pokers. What I should have done a long time ago. Margaret, put that down, Frank said, taking a step forward. Don't come any closer. Let's talk this over. Talk? Margaret laughed hysterically. My son is dead because of you two. Margaret, please, Olivia begged. You killed my child. No, I did. Margaret swung the poker. Olivia tried to dodge it, but it hit her in the temple. She fell to the floor, blood flowing from the wound. Frank rushed to Olivia, but it was too late. Her eyes were glassy. Her breathing had stopped. What have you done? He whispered. Margaret stood with the poker in her hands, staring at Olivia's body. What had to be done? She said quietly. You killed her. How she killed my son. Margaret, do you realize what you've done? She looked at him with cold eyes. Yes, I restored justice. Frank reached for his phone, but Margaret stopped him. Don't call the police. What? We need to talk first. About what? About how you're going to confess to killing Tom. I didn't kill Tom. Then who? Olivia is dead. Someone has to answer for my son's death. Frank realized he was trapped. Margaret had planned this from the beginning. You planned this, he said. I wanted the truth, and I got it. But now you're a murderer. So are you. I didn't kill Tom. But you helped cover it up. You married his killer. You're an accomplice. Frank realized there was no way out. In a few minutes, the police would burst into the house, and they would both have to answer for their crimes. In the silence of the Henderson home, Olivia's body lay on the floor, and two people bound by marriage, divorce, and death stood facing each other, knowing that their lives had changed forever. The police arrived at Frank Henderson's house 20 minutes after he called them himself. Detective Cole was among the first to enter the house and discover Olivia's body in the living room. Margaret sat in a chair next to the fireplace, still holding the bloody poker. Frank stood by the window, pale as a sheet. Put down the weapon and raise your hands, Cole ordered, pointing his gun at Margaret. She calmly put down the poker and stood up. I'm ready. Margaret Henderson, you are under arrest on suspicion of murder. As the handcuffs were being put on her, Margaret looked at Frank. Now you know what it's like to lose someone you love. You have the right to remain silent, Cole continued. Anything you say can be used against you in court. I want to make a statement, Margaret said. You need a lawyer first. I don't need a lawyer. I want to tell the truth. At the station, Margaret sat across from Detective Cole in the interrogation room. She looked surprisingly calm for a woman who had just committed murder. Margaret, do you understand what you're accused of? Cole began. The murder of Olivia Henderson. Yes, I understand. And you're willing to give a statement without a lawyer? I'm willing to tell the truth, the whole truth. Cole turned on the tape recorder. Tell me what happened tonight. I went to their house to confront them with the evidence. What evidence? The testimony of Cindy, the cleaning lady. She heard them planning to kill my son. And what happened next? Olivia confessed. She said she was at the construction site in the morning when Tom died. She confessed to the murder? She said it was an accident, but I knew she was lying. Why did you think that? Because Dr. Hartwell showed me the medical evidence. Tom's injuries didn't match a simple fall. Cole made a note. And then you decided to kill Olivia? I didn't plan to kill her. But when she kept lying, when she said my son was a failure. Margaret paused. I lost control. Margaret, murder doesn't solve problems, but it restores justice. It's not your job to dispense justice. Margaret looked at him intently. Whose job is it? The police? You closed the case as an accident without even conducting a proper investigation. Cole felt a pang of conscience. We followed the evidence. You followed superficial evidence. If you had dug deeper, we're digging now. Tell me exactly what Olivia said to you. Margaret took a deep breath. She said Tom found out about their relationship with Frank. He confronted them at the construction site that morning. There was a fight, and Tom fell off the scaffolding. Did she say she pushed him? Not directly, but she admitted he fell during the struggle. And what did Frank say? Frank said that the scaffolding had been weakened beforehand. Cole looked up. Beforehand? Yes, he said it accidentally, then tried to deny it. So it was premeditated murder? I believe so. They planned Tom's death for the insurance money. Meanwhile, Frank sat in another interrogation room, waiting to be questioned. His lawyer, Robert Mills, had flown in from Phoenix and was now studying the case files. Frank, this is serious, Mills said. You could be charged with accessory to murder. I didn't kill Tom, but you married his killer and helped cover up the crime. It was an accident. Tell me exactly what happened. Frank sighed. Olivia and I had been dating for several months before Tom died. While she was married to your son. Yes, it was wrong, but we loved each other. And you discussed insurance? We talked about the future, about what would happen if Tom wasn't around. Did you plan to kill him? No, we never planned to kill him. But you loosened the scaffolding? Frank paused too long. It was a precaution. A precaution against what? Tom was getting suspicious. He was following Olivia, checking her phone. And you decided he had to go? We decided that if there was an accident, no one would suspect us. Mills shook his head. Frank, that's a confession of premeditated murder. But we didn't know he was coming to the construction site. But you created the conditions for his death. Tom climbed the scaffolding himself. We didn't force him. But you knew the scaffolding was unsafe. Frank realized he had been trapped by his own words. That evening, Dr. Emily Hartwell was called to the morgue to examine Olivia's body. The cause of death was obvious: severe head trauma from a blunt object. While she was working, Detective Cole joined her. What can you tell us? He asked. Death was instantaneous from the head injury. The blow was very strong. Strong enough to kill with one blow? Definitely. Margaret struck with great force. Or with great anger. Possibly both. Cole paused. Emily, now that it's over, tell me honestly about Tom's injuries. Emily put down her instruments. I knew something was wrong from the start. Why didn't you say so earlier? Because each injury could have been explained by the fall. Only when taken together did they paint a different picture. What picture? A picture of a struggle. Tom fought back. So he knew he was being attacked? Most likely. The scratches on his hands show that he was trying to hold on to something. The scaffolding? Or whoever was pushing him? Cole nodded. Thank you for your honesty. James, I'm sorry I wasn't more persistent from the start. We all make mistakes. What matters is that the truth came out in the end. The next day, news of Olivia's murder and Margaret's arrest spread through Tempe like wildfire. People gathered outside the courthouse discussing the tragic events of the past few weeks. Jessica from the bank gave an interview to the local news. I knew something was wrong with Olivia, she said on camera. She asked me to lie to the police about her alibi. I should have refused. Why did you agree? Asked the reporter. Because I was her friend. I thought I was helping her through a difficult time. What do you think now? Now I think I should have told the truth, from the beginning. In the Maricopa County Jail, Margaret sat in her cell reading letters of support from Tempe residents. Many people considered her a hero, a woman who had restored justice. Her court-appointed attorney, David Chen, came to discuss a defense strategy. Margaret, we have a few options, he said. What are they? Temporary insanity. You were acting out of grief and anger. I acted with full awareness. That won't help your case, but it's the truth. Margaret, you're facing life in prison or even the death penalty. I understand. Then let me defend you properly. Margaret paused. Okay, but I want the whole truth about Tom's death to come out. We'll use that to your advantage. We'll show that you acted out of grief over the loss of your son. What about Frank? He'll be charged with first-degree murder. His confession is enough for a conviction. A month after Olivia's murder, Margaret Henderson's trial began. The courtroom was packed. Many Tempe residents had come to support the woman they believed was trying to uphold justice. Prosecutor Stephen Wright presented the case as a simple murder motivated by revenge. Margaret Henderson killed Olivia Henderson in cold blood, he said in his opening statement. She planned this murder and carried it out without hesitation. Defense attorney David Chen presented a different version. My client is a grieving mother who lost her only son, he said. She acted under the influence of unbearable grief after learning the truth about how her child was killed. Detective Cole testified about the investigation into Tom's case. We made mistakes in the initial investigation, he admitted. If we had dug deeper, Olivia might still be alive. Dr. Hartwell discussed the medical evidence. Tom Henderson's injuries were not consistent with a simple fall from scaffolding, she testified. The nature of the injuries indicated a struggle. Cindy, a former cleaning lady, testified about conversations she overheard. They were planning to collect the insurance money, she said. Mr. Frank said the policy was worth $500,000, and Mrs. Olivia replied that Tom would never find out. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury retired to deliberate and returned 4 hours later. We find the defendant, Margaret Henderson, guilty of second-degree murder, the foreman announced. Margaret accepted the verdict calmly. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison. Mrs. Henderson, said the judge, while the court understands your grief, no one has the right to take the law into their own hands. I understand, Your Honor, Margaret replied, and I accept the punishment. Frank Henderson was found guilty of first-degree murder for the death of his son. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At the sentencing, he looked like a broken man. I have no excuses, he told the court. I killed my own son for money. I deserve this punishment. 6 months later, life in Tempe returned to normal. But the story of the Henderson family remained in people's memories as a warning of where greed and betrayal can lead. Detective Cole was reprimanded for his inadequate investigation of Tom's case, but he kept his job. The experience taught him to be more attentive to detail. Dr. Hartwell continued to work at the hospital, but was now more persistent in her medical conclusions. Jessica left the bank and moved to another city, unable to live with the guilt of helping to hide the truth. Frank's house on Scottsdale Road was sold to pay off debts. The new owners were unaware of the tragic events that had taken place within its walls. A new headstone appeared on Tom Henderson's grave in the Tempe Cemetery. It bore a simple inscription, "Beloved son." Truth prevailed. Fresh flowers lay beside it, brought by townspeople who remembered the young man who had fallen victim to his own family's greed. In prison, Margaret Henderson read letters from people who supported her actions. She knew she had paid a high price for justice, but she did not regret her choice. The story ended, but its lessons remained. Betrayal breeds betrayal, lies breed lies, and justice, even if delayed, always finds its way.